Okay, I'm going to continue the game between Rubenstein and Maroczy, played in Gothenburg 1920. And I just covered White's 16th move of knight to b3, attacking the queen. The queen then retreats to c7. And now White will play queen to b1. Looks like another why would White retreat its queen to b1? Well, the idea now is that if the knight moves, this knight here moves, and actually specifically to here, it's going to have attack on the queen, and then this knight can come jump right back in here, where it will fork both rooks, winning the exchange. So Black plays, we'll play queen to b8, and I guess the idea is to now for Black is to play something like this. Once again, still wants to get that in. Now White plays bishop to f3, putting the bishop on the long diagonal, and now Black can't actually play b5, or White would win the exchange. So Black now plays queen to a7, believe it or not, with the idea of putting the rook here, and then pushing the pawn and playing the bishop. White plays knight to a5, stopping that, because after the move, after all those moves, and Black finally plays the move b5, White can just play the move knight to c6, winning the exchange, because just going back, Black's plan is to play this and then this, and if the rook comes to b8, then White will just play the knight here and win the exchange. So now Black plays bishop to b4, basically telling the knight to go away. The knight will come to c4, jumping close to the center. Remember that it originally was on this square, and then it went to this square. So now it's actually in a better position. Bishop to d7, finally on the 20th move for Black, it developed its queen's bishop. And now White plays knight to d5, threatening to come to c7, winning the exchange, so Black has to get rid of it. So knight takes on d5, the bishop has to recapture. And now White is threatening to play bishop takes f7 check, the king takes, and then this rook here will take here, so threatening to win a pawn. So the bishop will move to e6, contesting the bishop also. Now the queen, this is a beautiful move by White. Almost every direction by White threatens. Here it actually threatens the bishop. If the knight moves, it's threatening another attack on the pawn. It's not threatening anything in this direction or this direction, and it's also threatening to win a pawn over here. So it's really doing, what is that, threefold duty with that move. So now remember I said there was a knight here before that jumped in and Black took it. The bishop comes in. Didn't take it right away, but now the queen comes up to protect it, and now the Black plays bishop takes d5, getting rid of the threat. Now the rook takes, so we've had a knight, bishop, and now a rook there on d5. And now Black will play rook on a to c8, because White was threatening to win this pawn here. So what it does is that it threatens, it basically is pinning the knight, because if the knight captures during the capture sequence of this pawn, then White can get checkmated. So basically this rook here is moved to pin the knight. Well, White just gets out of that by rook on c to d1, doubling the rooks. So it even increases the pressure. So undoes the pin and makes it itself even better. Black plays bishop to f8. The bishop was hanging there unprotected, so retreats it. b3 to protect the knight. Now the queen can move because the queen was tied down to the defense of the knight. b5, telling the knight to leave. Comes a d6, threatening to win the exchange. Black is forced to capture, and white recaptures with the rook. Now white is threatening to put the rook right there, and probably maybe double the rooks on the 7th, which will practically end the game. So black plays rook to c7, stopping white from playing rook to d7. h4. This knight here is defending the king side, so it wants to get rid of the knight. Black plays f6 to support the e-pawn here. But it does open up a diagonal to the king, so white will check. And hopefully the queen wants to really come down into the king position, so that's what it's doing. It's trying to, it's using d5 to trying to get closer to the king. And it's also, now we have a tripled pieces on the d file. King to h8. But the alternative was probably king to f8, but that's not good. Or what happens if king to f8, then probably h5, and knight to h8, rook to d8, knight to f7 to get it back in the game. Rook takes, king takes, queen check. I believe if rook to e7, it's mate, king to f8, and then h6, breaking down attacking the pawns, the pawns on the king's side. So that's what happens on that move. Instead, black plays king to h8, h5, evicting the knight. The knight goes to f8. If it goes to e7, it's just interfering with the defense along the 7th rank. h6, threatening to break up the pawns around the king. And what happens if the pawn takes, or maybe I'm going to say black's going to play knight to g6, but if it decides to play g takes h6, then rook takes f6, rook over to e7 to protect this pawn here. But then white will just take on f8, rook takes f8, bishop takes e5, black's in serious problems. And then rook takes e5, queen takes e5. Nah, technically white's only up a pawn, but obviously black's having problems. So if black plays knight to g6, actually really stopping the threat. The threat is also white wants to probably play the bishop to here. We'll attack this pawn here, after this pawn takes. So the knight gets more active there, and also stops the bishop from coming to h4. Queen to e6, threatening to take the rook with mate, threatening to put the rook on d7, threatening mate, or will threaten mate with pawn takes eventually. Obviously, rook cannot take the queen due to a checkmate on d8. The rook comes to f8 to bolster the defense of the f6 pawn. Rook to d7, obviously threatening mate now. Rook cannot take because then white will just retake the rook, attacking the queen and threatening mate. So g takes h6, and now bishop to h4 by white. Obviously, the black cannot take the bishop because the queen will then just come to here, threatening the rook and threatening mate, and white now threatens bishop takes f6. So that is the game between Rubenstein and Maroczy, played in 1920.